Hey, I'm Jeff, and I make music with my brother.
Hi, I'm Jonathan, and I also make music with my brother.
Together, we are Ekko and Sidetrack, and we make music that sounds like this.
And this.
And even this. This podcast is about music, creativity, and everything in between.
Welcome to A Band Apart with Ekko and Sidetrack.
Welcome back to the... Are you vaping?
Vape Nation, baby.
Tell me about vaping.
I really have enjoyed cigarettes in my life, and I want to smoke less. And I bought a packet of cigarettes a couple of weeks ago, and it cost me $63, which is crazy.
Whoa.
Which
For how many?
Crazy.
20.
For 25.
25.
And I smoked, 8 on one night, and I woke up the next day and I felt like shit. The next day, I smoked some cigarettes because I'm with a friend that smokes cigarettes, and I wake up the next day and still feel like shit. And I don't smoke any cigarettes that day.
Shout outs to Cigarillo Bobby.
And I realized, I enjoy doing this thing. I like doing this thing, but $60 is just a ridiculous amount of money to pay for cigarettes. And ultimately, I don't want to smoke.
Yes.
So I give the cigarettes to another friend that smokes. And I've got a wedding coming up the following week. And I know that I'm going to want to smoke something. I don't want to smoke any cigarettes. I don't want to also ask people for cigarettes because invariably I have some drinks, someone has a smoke, I'm like, oh, can I have a smoke? But because they're so expensive.
Yeah, you've just worked out there. What?
That's like $3. That's $3
each.
Give me $3, basically, is what you're saying. So I went out
for a Magnum Ego.
Exactly. So I bought a vape. I was like, I can use this to enjoy when I'm drinking, and it's not as harsh on my lungs. I don't know as much about what it's doing to me.
Yeah,
so it could be doing anything, but
yeah.
I feel like it's a bit lesser of two evils. And why I'm just having a vape now is because I am dopamine low, part of having ADD, and what the kind of ADD I have is that it's like a low dopamine thing. And I realized that I'm an addict for dopamine. So whether it's I have my Dexy, I have some coffee, and then I have a cigarette, it focuses, it gets me stimulated, it gets me going. So I figured if I have a couple of vapes before we podcast, maybe that's just going to sharpen the edges a little bit.
Interesting point.
Breathe it in. And I hate it. Like I was talking to someone at the wedding on the weekend, how uncool vaping is. And not that smoking cigarettes is cool.
It's a lot cooler than vaping, though.
But smoking cigarettes, I always think about a good example, especially in drum and bass, is when Rob Dimension has a photo when he's got a cigarette in his mouth. And I've just spoken to him about this. And that looks cool. You kind of look like a badass. It's, it's sexy. It's sexy.
There's a sexiness to it.
It's also that Rob's doing it. Rob's a sexy guy. But there's a sexiness to it. If there was a photo of Rob with a vape in his mouth,
blowing a Mad Dog cloud.
Yeah, that's uncool. Not unfuckable, but uncool.
Yeah. Are you... do you want to quit cigarettes? Would you like to be a non-smoker? You don't smoke many cigarettes.
Not really. But when I do, I love them. I'm kind of happy with not being I'm not smoking in the week. I don't need a cigarette every time I drink.
But do you want to be a non-smoker?
I want to be able to enjoy a cigarette every now and then, but not feel like when I have 3 beers, look around and be like, wow, who's got the ciggies?
But do you want to be a non-smoker, though?
Well, I don't want to smoke with the same frequency, but I always want to be able to have a cigarette.
You always want to be able to smoke?
Yeah. Even if that's like 1 cigarette a year, I'd like to lower my frequency to a point. It's like...
But never, not never.
But never, not never. Because I do find it enjoyable.
Have you ever tried nicotine gum?
No. But part of the thing I find enjoyable about smoking, and a lot of other people find enjoyable about smoking, though, is the social aspect, is the action of putting something to your mouth, is the blowing smoke out of your mouth. I've just always enjoyed that, and obviously there's a bit of nicotine enjoyment and probably the dopamine as well that I get. I think
The gum, I found someone gave me a piece and I had chewed half of it in the studio and the other half in the studio the next day, and I found it had a nootropic effect.
Yeah.
Then I got warned by my friend, shout out to Caitlin,
Hey, Caitlin.
that I shouldn't get in the habit of buying nicotine gum and using it as a nootropic, because then I'll get addicted to gum,
Yeah.
the nicotine gum.
It's
And
addictive.
yeah, and it's also it's not something my body has, but I'd be building up an addiction to it.
Yeah.
So, yes, it would be, it's less poisonous than smoking. But
Yeah.
it's not something you want to be getting too much into. That
No.
said, occasionally I have toyed with the idea of having a packet here just to be able to like half, and then, you get 1 milligram of nicotine. It just gives you a little bit of a zhuzh.
Yeah. I think that
We're
would be
always looking for that edge.
an idea.
Yeah,
Good
the reason I ask about the cigarettes to vaping and stuff like that is because apparently people will ingest more nicotine when they vape than they did when they smoke.
Absolutely.
As someone eloquently put it to me recently, I didn't punch darts on the shitter.
What a beautiful sentence.
Yeah. Meaning they didn't smoke on the toilet, but now they, happily go and vape on the toilet.
All my friends that vape regularly do it all the time.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It's not like because you can essentially do it anywhere. You're smoking like more than a packet a day, full of drawers and full of nicotine. Whereas most people, I was never a pack a day. Most people I know weren't a pack a day. They were like half a pack or a pack over 3 days or a pack on the weekend. Like,
Yeah, that's
but
crazy.
now it's like, especially people that have those larger vapes that they can control the percentage of nicotine or the burn on them or whatever that is. I don't know exactly what the percentage relates to, but you're doing a big draw of them at least, 3 or 4 every 10 minutes. It goes through a lot.
I just think there's never been a more obvious thing to me that is new and clearly bad for you. It's like a new piece of technology.
Yeah.
We never thought it would happen.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they could never reinvent smoking. Everyone knows smoking is bad for you. Like, holy shit, it tastes like bubblegum. Give it to me.
Yeah.
And I've had vapes. I've asked people for vapes. I'm not saying I'm innocent, but I just don't think I could get into it.
No. I think the sentence, I'm into vaping, is a pretty...
But are you into vaping?
No. I vape sometimes. I'm into music. If someone said to me, I'm into vaping like I'm into music, I would feel like you're going down a dark path.
Yeah. Speaking of not going down a dark path, how's your morning pages going?
Basically non-existent.
How come? Too much time vaping.
No, I think haven't made a priority, essentially. We had breakfast with our friend Yana this morning, and we were talking about, jumping into things with full gusto. The example that I talked about was, if you're not working out and you go, I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to go 5 days a week and I'm also going to get on testosterone and I'm going to take all these supplements and I'm going to do this, and diving all the way in, I think that's a pretty bad way to, or rather an easy way to fail at a new habit you want to build. And I think at the moment, the habit that I'm really trying to work on is finishing off extracurricular activities and trying to squeeze as much in a day as possible, which unfortunately means coming home from work and probably looking at my laptop at night, which I know isn't healthy. I'm trying to shut it off.
That's all right.
I'm trying to shut it off at 10. Sometimes I'm not doing that, which means I get to bed late, which means I struggle to wake up in the morning, which means I definitely don't have enough time in the morning before I start my day to do morning pages. Yeah.
It's amazing how the knock-on effects of habits and routines and rituals and how that like things go out the window. I'm noticing the same thing at the moment. Holly's in Bali with her sister.
Hey, Hol.
Hey, Holly. Hey, Meg.
And Meg.
And I'm like, I've got to do the washing. And so I like do it, and then I hang out at night, and then I'm like, I'll bring that in. And I was like, I'm rushing around trying to do so much. And I'm like, I just like to be at home to do some of these things.
Yeah.
Just to like be. And like I thought my week was going to be reasonably quiet, but somehow I've just managed to fill it up with stuff on every single night.
Mm.
And it's not really by choice. It's amazing how that can just happen. It's like the space is open and things fill like a vacuum.
Mm.
You really do have to say no to things. Otherwise, you will just give away all of your time.
Yeah. And also give things the appropriate amount of time. Yeah. It's amazing that something like hanging out your washing and tidying your room, for instance, should be a 20-minute job. But you add in a couple of distractions when you're tidying your room. You add in a couple look at your phones. You add in seeing another task that needs to be done and kind of half doing that. And you realize that can very easily bleed out to an hour just because of wandering focus and feeling like you can probably accomplish more than you set out to do.
Mm.
All those things, take time. And I know I am always underestimating my time and therefore trying to squeeze a lot in and kind of find myself feeling exhausted but happy that I did a bunch of stuff. So like last night, for instance, I finished work, picked up a camera lens off a friend, got home, went to the gym, got food, then came to the studio and did a lesson with Cade, and then spoke to Max, linguistics, on the phone. So by 11:30, between 4 and 11, I'd done quite a lot of stuff that was on my list of things to do. Mm. But it all felt very, it felt a little, it was like one too many things. I thought about delaying my call with Max, but I didn't because I'd made that commitment and I'm trying to be better at saying, we said we'd talk here, we haven't spoken in a while, this is when we're going to do it. And that made me feel good. And it's, what I'm trying to, I guess what I'm focusing on is enjoying being productive, but trying to stick with just being productive and do the things that I say I'm going to do. And if that takes me more time, then that's okay. But I'm learning that things are taking me more time. And something like morning pages or taking on the morning pages challenge or whatever it is, it's the same with meditation. They're things you add that is essentially 10 minutes, right? It's 10 minutes in the morning or 10 minutes in the afternoon or whatever. But it just feels like that extra little piece in an already packed day that is just hard to tack on.
Yeah, you've really got to, instead of tacking it on, you've got to remove some things. And again, that comes back to that saying no thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's rather than just having things happen for you or to you, you got to be like, oh, this is what I actually want to happen.
Yeah.
That's hard to do. Yeah. Are you still reading Big Magic or listening to Big Magic?
Yes. I've probably got about an hour left.
Yes. I started listening this week and it's lovely to be reminded of all the beautiful little ideas she has in there. If you've never read Big Magic, I suggest you go out and get yourself a copy or get yourself a copy on Audible.
Yes. Absolutely.
We recommended it recently to our friend Ruth. Shout out to Ruth. And I recommend it to someone at work as well because it's just a beautiful, encouraging read or listen. And I like her point particularly about ideas as like entities.
Yeah.
As in like if you think about ideas like people really, you've got to pay attention to them when they come and visit you. Otherwise, they will disappear. And it tells a beautiful story. I won't tell here, but it's exciting and, speaks volumes to her concept of big magic about these like big ideas and like giving yourself enough space to receive ideas.
Yeah.
And I just thought of that when we're talking about like, rushing around or filling our time with stuff. It doesn't leave as much time as we may like for big magic to visit.
No.
Or stay.
Have you had any ideas? I've definitely got 2 ideas that have been, since listening to Big Magic, that have been to the top of my stock pot, if you will, if my brain is a stock pot. They're coming to the surface. And I'm like, I need to give these 2 things a certain amount of time so they can go from being an idea to being a tangible. Like, is this a tangible option? Because both of them I feel would help the world and help me. And I know that someone will do them. Like, they are things that someone will do soon. And like Elizabeth Gilbert says in the book, she has an idea, doesn't go through with it, and then she finds out someone else had the exact same idea. And that happens a lot. And I feel like these ideas, this is like the last time they're coming to visit me and saying, hey, we want to work with you, but you need to give us a bit of attention.
Australian stockists for suck devices.
What?
Becoming an Australian stockist for sucking devices from Japan.
No, I feel like that market's pretty
saturated.
Yeah, maybe saturated. I could definitely. I could be a spokesperson, maybe, but no, they're 2 small ideas that,
I feel like that would
just need a bit of experimentation, and that's enough. That's enough to, you give that attention to an idea, and the idea will go, okay, he wants to hang with me. I can stay around a bit longer.
It's watering a plant, really. You got to tend to it. I've had music ideas come and go, as in like, or lyric ideas, not necessarily lyric, like vocal ideas. Like I've been playing around with some chords and something like that, and I've just had an idea. And I'm like, well, that's kind of catchy, and I've recorded it into my phone. And then I'll like go and work some more, and I'm like, I've completely forgotten what I just sang.
Yeah,
and it's like I grabbed it, recorded it, so I have it for later.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad it did, because otherwise it would have just slipped through my fingers.
It's like, that happens to me all the time when I'm just about to go to bed, and I hear a fully formed song in my head, and I go, if I just get my laptop and just write those chords down.
Why don't you just hum it into your phone?
I have hummed it in my phone, and I listen back and go, oh yeah, I know that, and then I'll write it down in the morning, or I've sometimes grabbed my laptop and started working, to the detriment of my sleep. And to the detriment of my the next morning, but for 25 minutes, I wrote down and figured out those chords, and then just kept humming and maybe wrote another melody. I was like, okay, cool, that's enough. I need to actually go visit those ideas on my laptop.
Yeah, I'd love to hear them.
They're pretty basic, but in my head, and it's interesting. We've been doing some sessions with people, doing a bit of mentoring, tutoring, helping people work on their songs, take their music to the next level. If you're interested, reach out to us on your social media. Or our social media, rather. And I've been kind of trying to figure out how they hear music or where they get ideas from. Because for me, I hear a fully formed song in my head. I hear the song, and what I then try to do is pull out parts and try to get them down on the board. Some people don't hear music at all. Some people want something so badly that they just create, and they find their way along the way. I think I am much more of like a fully realized visual person. It's like I watch a movie. I have an idea for a movie, and I see the frames.
Yep.
And I then try to extrapolate all that information as well as I can into a written idea, and it comes in flashes or it comes in parts. It's the same with music.
So it's interesting you say that because I've never thought about how that kind of works for me. But the way you just described it sounds like you hear the fully formed piece of music, then you pick pieces out. It sounds like you see the full frame. Oh, we'll stick with the music analogy.
Yeah.
See the fully formed or hear the fully formed piece of music, pull out certain bits, then do your own recreation down here. Do you think there's danger that what you've recreated won't sound like what you imagined because you're kind of reverse engineering from your idea?
And it's not that.
So, is there any benefit to hearing the fully formed thing and rather than trying to articulate and like pull something from there and be like, what would do this? Kind of just being like, that's a great thing to aim for. And then just starting and then growing it rather than having that perfect idea in mind. Because that's the problem with ideas, I find, is that they're so perfect in your head.
Yeah.
If we imagine, we have a conversation about like what a video clip would look like or what a movie, oh man, someone should make a movie about two brothers that go to space and fight against something. And you're like, whoa, yeah, you imagine in your head.
Aliens.
Yes, exactly. You imagine so many sick things.
Hell of a movie.
But in reality, it's actually going to take a lot to get there.
Yeah.
Your taste versus ability kind of thing. So with the point you just made with the music, you're imagining a perfect thing.
Yeah.
And then when you go to create it, you're like constantly referencing the perfect thing, or you're not constantly referencing.
No, so you're not constantly referencing. Maybe it's more like you're walking past an open door in a studio and someone's playing a fully formed wicked song. And then you look in and someone notices you looking in and they're like, I'll close the door. And you close the door.
This is not for you.
And then you write from the memory of that thing.
Yes.
So it's like it's not necessarily a straight recreation. It could, I hear a song and that song makes me feel a certain way. And I try to recreate how that song made me feel.
And then I suppose what I'm, yeah, I understand that. And then the next part, are you referring back to how you originally felt when you heard the music through the door, or are you then building on what you have and go, I like where this is going. This is where I'm going with this. Like it was just the initial spark.
It's only the initial spark.
Okay.
Because again, you can't reference. You can't keep going back to. A lot of these ideas come to me when I'm just going into sleep.
Mm.
So it's almost like a dream.
Mm.
They're very difficult things to go back and reference.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why it's good to get if it's chords that I'm hearing, just get down the MIDI in a basic serum patch so you can go back to the chords and that's what you start referencing. And from that point, it's the feeling. So your feeling will then dictate the choices you make. If the chords change, if the drums change or whatever changes from the original idea or thing you heard in your dream or wherever it is, that's fine. And you keep coming back to reference the feeling.
Yeah,
and if that feeling is euphoria. I felt like it was a blast of euphoria and I was standing by the gates of heaven or whatever. That then becomes the reference and means that I might choose a certain type of synth sound, or I choose a certain type of vocal, or I choose a certain type of breakdown. So you're trying to recapture that emotion that you felt in that moment.
But you're working within the palette that you're working with.
Yeah.
So your drum choices are relating to what you have rather than so much of what you remember hearing.
Yeah.
Is it Teed that talks about hearing songs and then rather than recreating them, he recreates what he kind of thinks it was?
I think so. And it's similar to that. It's like you're trying to create from the memory of it. I remember when Chris Watsonot was writing his album downstairs, and if we would pop into each other's studios, which was quite often, there was a time when we came in and he was like, I forgot to save I worked on a song quite a lot last night and I forgot to save a version. So we had to try to recreate it from that memory. And when he finished it, I think it was when he finished it, he was playing it and he was like, it's just not as good as what it used to be. And we had the discussion about like, it's not that it's not as good, it's that you're holding the old version in such high esteem because you can't hear that thing ever again.
Yeah, it's a perfect idea because you're adding so much to it.
And and that sometimes happens.
Mm.
And you've got to let go of that, the concept of a perfect idea.
And that can be a bit dangerous. That's kind of why I asked you to flesh out your point about what you were just saying about the remembering ideas or something like that, is because the perfection of the original idea being an idea could get in the way of a great piece of original music being written. Because that's why I asked you, do you reference back to the idea? Because that would be incredibly dangerous. Because when you put in just standard chords,
yeah,
you're already like, oh, it just doesn't sound
the same.
Epic.
And I think the example I think of is what the original version of The Light sounded like. It was this big ARPy thing, and I was referencing a completely non-electronic song. And for a long time, I couldn't get away from that reference. And that actually stopped me from working on that song. I didn't work on that song for like a year. And it wasn't until I think I came back. That song was originally started in 2020 in the UK when I was in lockdown by myself. And I showed it to Ruth halfway through 2020 when me and her went down to see Josh Graphics. And then it was so attached to the reference that I couldn't move past it until 2022, basically, maybe the end of 21, when, we were going through demos and you're like, that's, what's that song? Originally it was called Prophets.
Yeah, it just had to be simplified. There was just too many parts to the story.
And essentially the ARP the ARP became a lead line, which we extracted out, and then
we changed it as well.
We changed, and then the song could move on from what it was locked in to be. I think, when you get too attached to the reference or to what the song originally was, that definitely can stifle creativity. You just need to keep moving forward.
Because it's going to become something different. Like, I think lately in the studio, I've been writing... how would I call it? It's like almost like song starters. Wow. I had no idea you could do that.
I'm basically like Gandalf.
You are. Blow
a ship?
Basically.
There's a ship in there.
I'm writing like kind of song starters, as in like I always start with a drone. Like I'll make a drone in some weird way, probably on the like root node of the scale I'm working in.
Yep.
And then just write like textures over the top, and then I'll hear something and I'll go, oh yes. And so often that's how I'll start a tune, and that's what I kind of end up with is like bits and pieces, and then I have to distill it more into like, cool, this could become a song. But I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to get like 4 or 5 of these to a point where I could share them with you and be like, here's something to springboard off.
Yeah.
None of them are completed tunes. There's some cool sounds to play with. The mix is off, but like there's something
it's a vibe.
Vibing about it.
Yeah.
But there's lots of elements because I find that if I can get a tune to... two things. If I can get a tune feels like it's missing something, like 1 or 2 things, you'll just zero in on what those two things are, and then you'll write something new, and then you end up muting a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like hearing a vocal. Oh, it needs like this, and then the song comes to life. So not trying to write too many things, too many parts,
Yeah.
but trying to get this like bed of sounds that is inspiring to write the next thing.
Yeah.
But I'm also trying not to get married to any idea. I'm trying to let the next choice lead the whole concept.
Yeah.
So it's like, whoa, I had no idea this was going to have piano, but I really like the way that piano sits. Okay. All right, what's this like? Wait, if I turn that up heaps, is there like this weird little percussive hit? Whoa, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to chop that. Now that weird thing that's noisy, that's percussion. And just like constantly leading, following the thread rather than judging and being like, well, what fucking key am I in now? Or
Yeah.
like, why is this a 64 bar intro? Or like, there's no room for a vocal. Is this a lead song? Like, are these drums going to be heavy? It's just like,
you're letting the idea drive.
yes,
And you're
good way of putting it.
simply the vessel for the idea to come through.
Yeah.
You know, you're writing. I think there was a demo I worked on the other day that had this moment with these percussive bass notes. The bass notes are wrong. I knew they were wrong, but I didn't care that they were wrong. I was more just putting it down that at that point I want the bass to go doo doo doo, and that's it. We'll come back and fix the notes. We can come back and fix that. It's the feeling of the rhythm of the bass that you're trying to capture, and then you move on, because as soon as you stop and either question a decision or you you take too much time trying to refine a sound.
I think it's taking too much time. You can question a decision, but it's if you take too long, you do get stuck.
Yeah, because it's, all the good songs, or all the songs that have really resonated with both of us and our audience have always been songs that have come together the idea has always come together fairly quickly. And then the long part of it is the arrangement, stretching it out, the mixing of everything, finding the right drums, finding the right sounds. But it's always, within an hour, you're just like, you're in flow state. You're allowing the idea to be regurgitated out of you, essentially.
Yeah.
And you come back and clean it all up.
Yeah, there's something that's so true. Like a good idea should kind of come quite quickly. You can always finesse. You're going to finesse everything a million times. Don't worry about finessing that stuff now. Just get something down, feel the vibe, and then almost like we were just saying about like having ideas just before you go to sleep, or humming something into a phone. Get it down and then be like, oh, yes, I can come back to this.
Yeah.
It's like you've made some permanent record of it.
Yeah.
Rather than it just being a perfect idea in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a fun way to work. And it's also, it's made me go, shit, well, now I've got like 3 things that I need to work on before I show Jono. But then I'm going to do more of a show and tell.
Yeah.
And I want to be like, hey, any of these inspire you? Let's work on some of them.
And I think the key with that is have lots of those. Have 20 ideas that you spend an hour on.
Yeah.
And you got to get to a point where you're happy to share them with me. And I hopefully, and the same back to you, I hear it and go, oh, it should do this. Or you have an idea for it.
Which is creating with like a space in there that there's room for something. I'm not just being like, what do you think of this finished thing?
Yeah,
and you're like,
it's not a presentation.
Maybe it's not a presentation. It's like, here's something I need you to add to.
Yeah, it's like with a rocket going into space. Your initial thrust comes from one booster, and then there's a moment where you drop a little, and then the second booster comes in, and it keeps making your rocket or idea or song fly into the stratosphere. It's that like stepping stone energy that keeps proliferating the initial inspiration.
And also, I think something I want to get better with is if I am married to an idea and kind of married to a certain outcome, then I should be like, clear with where I would like it to go. Like, I think
Yeah.
there should be a song with lighter drums, and I think we should get this kind of vocal.
Yeah.
She'd be like, cool, let's follow that thread. But if I'm really not married to anything, I'll be like, you now have free range.
Yeah.
Free reign? Free range.
Free reign.
Free reign.
I think it's free reign.
Ooh, yeah. I'll come back to a misunderstanding of a word in a second. But yeah, like, so you can springboard off it and you can do whatever you want. And then you give it back, because then neither of us have an expectation. We're just writing a good song.
Yeah.
And I think it was Chase and Status that do that. Like, one would finish the other's tunes, and that seems to be the way that they would best collaborate. Because I actually do think when we're both in the studio, one of us needs to be quite distracted. Otherwise, we end up working on top of each other,
Yeah.
which is not productive.
And ultimately, it's like, it can sometimes take us longer to get to what might be the same end goal. Yeah. Because we'll be, again, like commenting on how we're trying to get there.
Sorry, I'm yawning so much on the podcast. I didn't sleep very well last night.
Well, why didn't you sleep
I just keep going
very well?
to bed too late because I'm cramming too many things in. But side note, I'm just explaining why.
It's like we're both getting from A to B, but how I get there might be a different route to how you get there. And I think sometimes our communication, or we get mixed up or muddled up in how we get there, whether that's how you're putting together a sound in Serum, or whether that's a sample that you're choosing, or whether that's where you go looking for that sample, or whatever it is. We're two different people. We're going to think differently, but 80% of the time we work well together, and our music is good, and as a collaboration, it's good because 80% of the time we're getting to the same spot. We're just doing it differently.
We do it well when we have something else to do in the studio.
Yeah.
Like, someone else is focused on doing something that takes them away enough that they don't get bothered by your thing, or they're reading a book or something like that, and giving each other more time to do something.
And how often do, one of us will be lying down if we're tired and had a long day, or in another room, and you'll hear something.
Yeah.
And you'll come in and be like, what if it did dun 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 instead of da 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 da? And you're like, cool. And then you leave the room again, or you like go back to doing your work.
Yeah.
It's like that passive listening is also quite helpful in the creative process. And we're very lucky that we have a collaboration to do that, because someone like, again, Rob doesn't have that person. He's in there by himself and is kind of has to like, not brute force it, but just like keep going.
But I think sometimes that's an advantage, because you're making
the decision.
You're making your own mess, and you're choosing what you clean up, and you're grabbing it. Whereas someone else could get completely enamored with something that's actually a scrap on the floor.
Yeah.
And can kind of distract the flow, or your flow. Really, they should take that scrap and do what they want with it. Because one song can splinter into 15 if you want it to. But sometimes you just have to work out that at the moment we're not working on that other song. We're working on this, which can be difficult to communicate. But I think, I'm excited to show you some of the stuff. I'm also excited to reopen some old projects that were worked on during the album sequence. And we're like, we'll leave this till later, and hear them with fresh ears, and all of a sudden just be like, I think I know what has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk about with Cameron Crooked and Caracal Project, they're playing this weekend in Perth. And I've kind of spoken about it with Marcus before from Cameron Crooked, but I want to know more, especially after we've finished our album, is how they do it with three people if they're working with Martin Matthews.
Well, remember, he kind of explained it.
Well, he talked about Marcus and Martin are kind of like write a bunch of ideas, and Reini, the other guy in Cameron Crooked, is usually he had a German word for it.
It's like turd shaper.
Turd shaper or shit shaper. It sounds way funner in German. But and Ryan would come and take those ideas and make some sense of them. But yeah, I want to know if, there's the same attachment that we have, because sometimes we've done it to each other. You change something or you make a decision and the other person will be like, what are you doing? Like, why have you ruined my fucking song?
Yeah.
And I wonder if they do that too. Or the same with Caracol Project when he works with Bunshin or Amanu. Do you just accept the idea, or is the idea better? You see it's moving forward and so it's not questioned? Or do they still have that same emotional response? Or maybe they don't articulate it because they're not brothers. And maybe we're quicker to articulate it because we can say that to each other and we know at the end of the day we're still
I think sometimes
blood relation.
Yeah, I think sometimes as well I need to see an articulated idea, not just the idea of an idea. Like, hey, I've changed this idea, but I think it could be. I'm like, make it that rather than don't give me I think I can. It's like replacing like, hey, I know we've shot this scene, but I've replaced it with these hand-drawn storyboards. What do you think? I'm like, by all means, but go and execute it rather than...
Proof of concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I think that's pretty important. At least something that proves the idea a bit more rather than just presenting another what if.
Yeah, because too many options is paralyzing.
Yeah.
Paralysis through analysis. Jonathan, I think it's nearly time for us to wrap this up, but I do have a lovely
it is.
little message.
Sure.
Today I received a message from my friend at work, Dan, who over the years has played a bunch of our music for his kids, and often I'll send him pre-release link.
Dub plate. He's on that dub plate list.
He's on that dub list, as he said to me today. He goes, "Don't worry, I won't share this with anyone over 7 years old." But his kids historically have liked our music to the point where he bought a little controller for his kids, and his kids like to DJ our music, which is quite cool.
That's cool. Better not be downloading that music. Better be buying it legitimately, children.
But so I sent them one of the new tracks off the album.
Yep.
It's 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they really like it. So when they get in the car, they're like, Jeff song. And then he sent me a video today saying they were craving Jeff's song as shown in this video. Like, let's play Jeff's song. Like, getting quite excited about it. Little boy and a girl. And then he goes, and they were heartbroken when I went to click the link and the link had moved because the Dropbox link has been deleted. But it's two things. Update your Dropbox links and keep them live. But more so, it's great to see our music being received by all ages, and the hype cuts through.
Yeah, I think that's really cool to see.
Yeah.
I know I always get a kick when our nephews and nieces request our music when our brother's driving them around.
Yeah.
It's good to know that they respond to it. And even when they came into the studio and we showed them stuff, they're like, this is cool. Like, this song's sick.
I was amazed by how producerly they got. They're like, oh, okay,
Dude.
Can we add another layer of this? And like, if we're adding this, and I'm like, the fact that you already understand multi-track recording is...
Kids' brains are like sponges.
Mm.
And yeah, it would be cool to turn one of them into a producer.
Yes. Or maybe birth your own child and turn that child into a producer.
Yeah, I definitely want to impart and force my child to do something I believe that's cool.
Yeah, like dance.
Yeah.
Anything.
My kid better be a dancer, a music producer,
A great drummer.
a film actor, a film director, photographer.
Humble.
Yeah.
Love his family. Have a lot of time for people.
Yeah. Be on time.
Be on time.
Meditate. Do morning pages. I've got
have
such high expectations for my children. I need to birth one first. Perhaps out of my penis. Right. So we do have to wrap this up, Jeff. What have you learnt this week? I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first.
I learnt that every time we do this, all I want to say is dogs lay eggs, and it's a silly quote, but I always find it funny. I learnt that I can confidently speak into a microphone in front of a large group of people and be funny and entertaining. And I think I've always known that to a degree, but I think I'm interested to do it more and keen to flex that muscle a bit more. And I hadn't done it in a while, but I emceed my friend's wedding last weekend. Congratulations, Fendi and Michelle. And it was enjoyable. You know, it's very enjoyable.
Did a great job
to make jokes and to kind of be yourself with a microphone and people, and it connects with people. And so, yeah, that's what I learned this week.
I learned something about Chev, the cat. I think he knows what a suitcase is, and I think he knows when people are leaving the house, and that's why he hasn't seen me the last couple of nights, because he thinks we've both gone away, and now he's staying away.
Because he's seen Hole go away.
Yes.
Oh, Chev.
I think he knows too much, but we'll put in that cat door, and we're going to teach him a new lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a new sheriff in town, Chev, and its name is
Daddy Jeff.
Indoor-outdoor door. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I learned. Because I haven't seen him in a minute. The other part of the reason I'd like to go home a bit earlier tonight
is to get him.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's a good idea.
I'm going to get you, Chev.
To call his little name so he knows that Papa's home.
That's it. He fell asleep on the couch with me the other day. He was knackered from all that work he's doing. He's in...
he knows what a suitcase is because he takes a briefcase to work every day.
Yeah, he's in data analysis for the Australian government. Anyway, Jonathan, I love you.
I love you too, buddy.
Let's do it again sometime.
We'll never not do it and never not have fun doing it. See you later.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast. We are Ekko and Sidetrack on all social media. We've recently updated our YouTube. Go and give that a subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the latest video podcasts. And follow us on Spotify too so you can keep up to date with all our latest music releases. Big up.